Oh, so I'd like to say a few words about Gerard Manley Hopkins, the man, the poet, and the priest. We've been looking at some of his works, and I'd just like to give you a little bit of a background, a brief capsule, so to speak, of some of the things that may have influenced him in terms of where he's coming from. So he was born the eldest of nine children to a well educated middle class Anglican family in 1844. And at a young age, he excelled in studies and eventually won a scholarship to Oxford University in 1863. So he'd been like 19 years of age. And there he studied the classics, and he did extremely well. He got a first place, first class degree in the Greats program. He graduated top of his class, and while he was there, he came under the influence of a number of three specific individuals who contributed to his moving away from the Church of England, a choice which was to have an adverse effect on his relationship with his family, his chosen career, and even his close friends. And then in 1866, he left he left the Anglican Church and joined the Roman Catholic Church, and he was able to continue his studies at Oxford. But this break with his Anglican faith had negative effects on his mainstream English life, for at that time students were required to embrace an Anglican declaration of faith. And one consequence of this break was that he was barred from fellowship at the Oxford College for teaching, despite his scholarly record. In fact, he couldn't even continue some of his studies, but that law changed some years later. He was alienated from his family, so this was a major, critical decision he made. And to compound matters worse, 2 years later, he joined the Jesuit order and became a Catholic priest. So, as a gifted poet and an artist, he put away his literary ambitions because he had been writing poetry up until that time, and he was determined to commit his entire person to follow Christ in the discipline of the spiritual exercises of Saint Ignatius, and that was a regimen of complete self-denial. So, as a demonstration of this, he made a decision to burn all of his previous poetry, calling it the destruction of the innocents. And in a letter to a friend, he wrote, this is what he said: I resolved to write no more as not belonging to my profession, unless it were by wish of my professors. That permission came sooner than he might have imagined, because while he was studying in a novitiate in Wales, he read an account of a shipwreck of a German vessel named the Deutschland, and on that vessel were five nuns, and they were drowned. So he shared his concern over this, the loss of those souls, with his superior, and he was given permission to write a poem about the tragedy. So the result was a 35 stanza poem, which was a very difficult verse. And at first it was not well received, but it served to open the door for him to write poetry thereafter. And most of the writings were done in England and in Wales. In 1883, he was chosen to teach Greek and Latin in Dublin, Ireland, and this was a very difficult time of his life. He was suffering from a number of undetermined illnesses, and he battled fierce bouts of depression as well. But even under these conditions, he channeled those bouts of depression into his writing, and he wrote sonnets about that, and they were called the Terrible Sonnets. So, in the age of 44, in 1889, he contracted typhoid fever, and he died at that young age. So, his poetry is very intimidating to someone who has never read anything by him before. So, on first glance, he's not easy to read. And also, it's difficult to classify him as a specific type of writer in terms of his content. You might be tempted to call him a modernist because he used innovative techniques of style, and he also could be called a nature poet or a poet of desolation or woe, even an environmentalist. So he wore a number of different caps in that regard, because even he channeled his views on environmental destruction into poetry as well. He wrote a number of poems opposing industrial development. And at times he does consider each of these many topics. But the common thread running through all his works is that of God's investment in the maintenance of the world, in the world order. We experience the beauty and wonder of God's creation in his purely religious works, such as God's grandeur and high beauty. Another common thread that is found is everything in nature has a purpose in the eyes of God, a fulfilling, it's God-given purpose. That's the way he reveals this beauty and why it was created. This might be seen in things like the cry of a bird, a skylark, or the ringing of a bell, or even looking at the veins of a violet, a flower, and it reveals God's beauty. So he expressed this in one poem, calling it, "What I do is me, for that I came, and for that. And as for man, he acts in God's eyes what in God's eye he is, Christ playing in 10,000 places." So to convey this vision of the world through his poetry, Hopkins invented even terms to help the reader to understand what he was trying to share with the reader. And these terms were called inscape and instress, which I'll talk about in a minute. But his poetry is characterized by vivid imagery as well as distinctness of word choice. Other features which make his works intimidating are his syntax, stretched syntax, his inverted word order, the elimination of key words that make a sentence have meaning, such as, most ideas are expressed in declarative sentences, subject, verb, direct object, but his poetry, his lines might even begin with an adjective, and you have to kind of hunt around and find out where he's going with this idea. And he even invents words to convey his ideas best, because he found that commonly used words were insufficient to express his concepts. So in that regard, he is difficult to understand, but after reading a number of his works, you get used to his style, and it becomes a little easier to clarify or to break apart what he's trying to share with us. So the two terms I mentioned are inscape and instress. Hopkins saw the world through the lens of God holding everything in existence from moment to moment. Although we may know this concept to be true, we do not continually practice it in our daily lives. Hence, we are not seeing things as they truly are. Hopkins called this vision inscape. Everything in existence has an individuality. Its outer shape reveals its inner beauty. It is a deeper vision of the soul of things, their unique individuality, demonstrating the presence of God within them. His passion for this individuality, for whatever was original, inspired his whole outlook and work. The Hopkins Inscape was a living testament to the psalm, "The heavens declare the beauty, the grandeur of God, and all of his creation proclaims his handiwork." So that was his mission, to share that vision with the reader. And the second term is in stress, and this is a term that he invented, which denotes the internal quality that holds something together. It's an energy or a charge or a force which God has put into things to sustain them. It is also our capacity to receive and respond to the inscape in nature, from the action to the universe, from the atom to the universe, from the smallest thing to the largest. He likens it to a gift of grace we are given if we are willing to respond to inscape found in things. In his poetry, creating this in-stress became his chief aim, that of shaping the experience for the reader so that he sees it through this new vision of things. To see the world as it is meant to be seen, we must change our focus. We must see it as God-centered. The beauty of the world has always been there, but only lacking a beholder. In a poem entitled Harrowing the Harvest, he states this idea in these words: these things, we're here, but the beholder wanting. So that's a little brief overview of what Hopkins was about in his works.